What's happening, everybody? I am Joey Powell from Inside Carolina, now on the On3 network. If you have not moved over and joined us on On3, if you can knock your pockets around, you will find $1, I promise you, even in this economy. We want you to join us. Uh, I'm Joey Powell. He's Tommy Ashley over there. And the guy that's
pride of Garner, North Carolina, ladies and gentlemen, Tommy
there we
Ashley,
go.
right?
No, don't you put Garner on me,
Okay,
Wes Durham.
Clayton. Was it Clayton?
Clayton,
Yeah, Clayton.
absolutely.
I'm sorry. Clayton.
Them
You guys,
fighting words now.
Yeah, I know.
the guy that's making all the ruckus, y'all know him as the voice of the ACC, but we know him as one of the sharpest minds in college football broadcasting. And Wes Durham joins us today. He's going to try to help us do the impossible. Imagine what it looks like when Bill Belichick, the hoodie himself, leads UNC football. From Kenan Stadium sidelines to ACC Media Days, we're going to talk about what happens when the greatest NFL coach of all time walks out of the tunnel at Kenan Stadium. So, Wes, you have covered every twist of ACC football for a long time.
Yes.
What was your gut reaction when you heard Bill Belichick was coming to Chapel Hill?
What the hell would my dad say?
Well, what would he say?
Well, Tommy heard the story during the elongated rain delays of the baseball regional. We had the Cal Stanford conversation, didn't we? Yeah, about how my dad would have said, Cal and Stanford are coming in this league. Well, I don't know who the hell's going out there to do the games, but it's not going to be me. In fact, that was the day that happened. I should tell you guys this a couple of years ago. Remember, in the early wanes of a football season is when Cal and Stanford got admitted into the league, right? And that day, a text chain went with Jones, me, my brother, and a couple other people that knew my dad. Like, what would your dad think today? I said, I can tell you damn well what would happen. He'd say, we're not getting on that plane.
Hey,
Jones,
hey, Woody, no chance.
Hey, Woody, no chance. That's exactly right. I think he would. Well, my dad loved Carolina football. You guys know that. I mean, anybody that listened to my dad, as much as success as basketball had in his 40 years, Joey and Tommy, my dad loved Carolina football. It's the way he grew up. He was not exposed to Carolina basketball as a child. He was exposed to Carolina football. Justice was his hero. And one of the great moments of his career was the ability to do games with Charlie Justice in the 1970s. People don't understand what that meant to my dad. And the highest honor he was ever paid was to deliver the eulogy at Charlie's funeral. And it was the one of the few times I saw him get completely emotional about the man. So for me, my dad equated every success Carolina ever had to secular teams that he broadcast. 1980 certainly would be one. 97 would have been one. But he also equated any success Carolina had to what Justice did in his era and what Jim Tatum was going to be capable of doing. And I think that's where this is. I mean, I just do. Historically, Carolina football has never been discussed as much in a 8 or 9 month window as it has been in these 8 or 9 months. And now the show's on the road. We see what happens Monday night. And quite frankly, I think it has a chance to be pretty good. I think it's a workable schedule, and workable, if you want to equate workable to easy, go right ahead. But Carolina has a chance, win or lose Monday night, to have a 7 or 8 win campaign. I was incredibly impressed at the practice when we did the road show. I'm not surprised. I was impressed. Surprise means I saw things I didn't think I'd see. Impressed was what I was with the very deliberate nature of those practices were conducted, how very detailed driven they were in terms of just the drills and the accomplishment and the competitive nature of the drill as it related to what maybe the big picture is. Now, full disclosure, I saw his Patriot teams do joint practices with the Atlanta Falcons in 2006. I watched 2 days of those. And this was back before we started everybody doing joint practices in the NFL. And I saw collaborative coaching in New England that time. And I realized collaborative coaching in New England was a staple of what Belichick does. And I think you guys are probably going to hear a lot about that as much as anybody's going to talk about coaching now at Chapel Hill. They're going to be very, very close to the vest once the season starts, and they should be. But I think Carolina has a chance to really be a competitive piece in this, understanding that it may not go well Monday night. You may win. I don't know. But I do know the one thing you can count on is, barring injury and the lack of a waiver wire in college football, Carolina has a chance to be a better football team in Week 14 than they do in Week 1, in my opinion, because of the coach and because of the way things are done there.
And quite frankly, it hadn't been that way in the last several years.
We can all point to November's. The last 5 of them have not been very good, right?
Absolutely. Now, you were there, obviously, on the ACC road trip. I saw you over there. You saw they shepherded the media in for their 6 minutes and then ran us out.
Yep.
But you guys got to see it, and you said you were impressed by the detail and all. The biggest thing I hear, and I want your opinion here, after seeing it up close, is people worry about how the pro approach will translate to college-age young men. I don't think it's a deal. What is your take?
What's the pro? You got to tell me what the pro approach is.
Well, I mean, it's a job. They've got these guys for 40, 24/7. How are they going to translate that to teaching college students 20 hours a week, blah, 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 blah.
Well, okay, I understand that. But if you've ever been to an NFL practice, NFL practices are a lot like college practices, which are in some ways like high school practices. What's the different equation? Level of experience of the player, level of experience of the coach, the collaboration of the coaching staff itself in relationship to the players, and the chemistry of the program. Those are the variables you deal with at any level, college, pro, high school, Pop Warner, I guess. For me, I saw collaborative coaching. I saw competitiveness. I saw kids who wanted to make plays. I mean, there was a red zone drill where it was competitive on both sides. Now, it was competitive in the sense that everything was challenged, and then there was coaching to support the competitiveness. And that's the thing that I caught as, okay, here's a direct carryover from what happened in New England. Okay? Mm-hmm. Because I always heard, and the ones I saw, albeit now 20 years ago, Tommy, those practices had collaborative coaching. Like Kevin Falk was a running back for the Patriots when they practiced Atlanta in 2006, right? And when Kevin Falk came off the field, he would talk to the next running back. Tom Brady would come off and he would talk to the offensive coordinator at the time, and I'm going to draw a blank. I think it may have been Charlie Weiss. I can't remember. No, it wasn't Charlie Weiss. He had already begun to decline at Notre Dame by then. But the idea of the competitive communication and the collaborative communication of this coaching staff is real. Now, I'm not saying they're exclusive in this category. I just think that that's what you're going to see. This whole thing about, can pros coach guys like that? I think what you're finding out is some of the stuff you're hearing from them tells you it's going well. For instance, and I asked him about this when we did the roadshow. He's talked about their work ethic, their attention to detail, the fact they are early, everybody's in a learning mode, things of that nature. Now, I know it's the summer, but I got the impression that everybody – and I did a sit-down with Gio Lopez and Jordan Shipp in Charlotte that has not aired, okay, and asked them about it. And Jordan Shipp talked about the attention to detail in the film room with Garrett McGee and guys with Freddie Kitchens in the big meeting room and Bill Belichick on platform, in front of the team talking about being competitive in every rep. I just think the voice in the room changed, and the voice happened to have 6 Super Bowl rings, right? And I think that makes a big difference. I think here's the other thing, too. In a very quiet way, he has expressed enthusiasm for their team, and he's enthusiastic about being there. That's the other part. He's an active participant in coaching in these practices. And I think that's encouraging to Carolina people who get a chance to watch practice. But at the same time, too, I think he's here to win. I think he's not here to coast. I think he's here to try and see if he can't turn this thing around. Because you guys know this, if he turns this thing around, this will be pretty unbelievable. I mean, you think about it. Because the guys who have done this before at the highest level in the National Football League, how many of them have been able to come to the college game and do it? Bill Walsh went to the NFL, won Super Bowls, came back and was not successful. It's going to be interesting, I think. Really interesting to see if he can do this.
Let me ask you a holistic thing that we talked about a lot in those rain delays you were talking about. Those would have been some epic shows to record.
Yeah, it's too bad, Joey. Those can't make the air.
I need y'all to go ahead and just put me on FaceTime next time you get into about a 30 or 45 minute elongated delay. Just call me up. I'll listen in.
When you're in Boschheimer's press box for the 3rd or 4th straight hour and it won't stop raining, you get into some deep waters.
Yeah.
But you've been around Carolina all your life, and you talked about what your dad would think and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you fully believe that Carolina is all in 100% after what you've seen, what you know, what you've heard? Is this a push all the chips in, we're going to ride or die with this, and it is what it is? Or is this just
A showpiece?
Carolina football?
No, I think there are a couple things about this that lead me to believe this is different. Like, I remember the conversation with my dad when Butch Davis got the job. And I said, oh boy, now you're in the football business. Okay. And truly, you did get in the football business. Maybe not the way you wanted to get in the
For
football
better or
business.
worse. Yeah.
You got in the football business. But now you've not only gotten in the football business, you've gotten in the financials of football. You got in the financial side. And in order to win now, there is a financial component that has to be realized. And that has to be realized. And that's the funny thing. Mark Packer and I had this conversation off air back when we were still doing Packer and Durham on ACC Network, was if they bring the money to the table through NIL and all these other things, we didn't know the portal would become as wild and as chaotic as it is. But if they bring the amount of money that people were talking about to the table, not just in the college football playoff, but in like settlements and payments and all this other stuff, then it was going to be based on your financial acumen was going to count as much as your recruiting acumen. Carolina has upped the financial acumen. Let's be honest. Carolina wants to be good. I don't know the inner workings of the University of North Carolina politically from a board of trustees perspective or administrative perspective, but don't just look at Lee Roberts or Bubba Cunningham or Steve Newmark in terms of relation to the football program. Look at the way it works at other schools too now. The president or chancellor at most institutions is actively involved in the alignment process that goes with college athletics and the programs that are the steering mechanisms of those programs, right? Like of those athletic departments, the sports that are the steering mechanism, football, basketball. In Carolina's case, you could loop field hockey in there. I think with the way DiBenedetto's doing the golf program, you put golf in there eventually. Those baseball. I think those are all the things you have to be aware of. And for me, I have the sense that Carolina's in on this like they've never been on this in the modern era. And I think that counts for something. And it certainly counts when the $10 million is going to the football coach.
They're certainly saying the right things. And we're talking with Wes Durham, voice of the ACC, here on a special UNC football preview episode of an Inside Carolina podcast. Wes, you mentioned kind of seeing some of those joint practices between Belichick and the Falcons when he was with the Patriots. Knowing his, I guess, attention to detail and his almost compulsivity with detail.
Oh, it's a big word, Joey. Careful now.
It's the only way I
just zone that.
It's the only way I can keep Tommy engaged.
Okay.
When you're thinking about stuff like that, looking at kind of how he's now taken this teacher mentality, do you think he would be able to live that throughout the course of a season, or do you think he probably just short circuits when he starts having to deal with more of this portal? And because again, the NFL has free agency, but they didn't have it the way college has it now without this collectively bargained situation between a players union and team. So do you think he could tolerate a full cycle of getting in and then teaching guys, and all of a sudden, things don't go exactly right and the guy hightails it, or vice versa?
Well, I think we have to find out, to be honest. And those are some of the unknowns. Like, for instance, the reason I mentioned the waiver wire is because when Chan Gailey, who had coached for years in the NFL after being successful at the Division II level at Troy, then he goes to the NFL as an assistant and ends up in Dallas as the head coach of the Cowboys. And he came to Georgia Tech off being the offensive coordinator of the Miami Dolphins for Dave Wannstedt, right? And in Chan's first year, I remember, he had the idea of putting Tony Hollings, this defensive back, at running back. And he got off to this unbelievable start. It looked like Tony Hollings was going to run into the Heisman Trophy, conversation like a third of the way through the season. And then his knee blew up against BYU. For me, Chan, then they had some injury situations develop behind that, right? And Chan said to me one day walking off the practice field, what would be good right now? I said, what's that? He said, a waiver wire. So I'm not kidding when there are going to be elements of this season and of the play Carolina has where, yeah, you hope, Davion Goss and Caleb Hood and I guess Benjamin Hall, the kid from Michigan, you hope that's the running back room, right? You hope that's the running back room for 15 or 16 games if you're Bill Belichick. What if it's not? What if the offensive line, which should be pretty good given kind of the elements and pieces it looks like in place? I would have questions of, I don't know a lot about the defensive line, right? Mm-hmm. So when you get to playing against TCU or you moved against Clemson in early October, what if you need another defensive lineman or two? Well, that's not available. It's a rookie or it's another kid or whatever the case may be. I think that's what I'm getting at that's the difference in the college and the pro game. You can find a guy on the back end to be the backup, right, the 3 technique on defense or the backup to the right tackle on Sundays. You can't do that in college. That's going to be the biggest challenge. However, that being said, don't forget the manpower and coaching right now in college has never been bigger. Analysts, player development, all this other riffraff. I mean, I'm not saying riffraff in a bad way. There's just so many other people now coaching. NFL staffs have as many as 30 assistant coaches. They are classified as some degree of a coach, right? Mm-hmm. College is getting that way. And now you bring this guy with Michael Lombardi, and we're not even talking about player, evaluation and, personnel jobs and things like that are happening. So, yeah, I do believe that somewhere along the way here, there's going to be a bump in the road from an injury perspective or whatever the case may be, or maybe the kid doesn't hit out of the portal. So then what happens? I think that'll be as curious as anything else we see.
You're speaking to Tommy's heart, because one of his favorite sayings is, it's not the recruits that you miss on, it's the ones that you do get that don't turn out. You made a great reference to history a few minutes ago, opening up the show, and I'm really glad you did. Carolina football has history. We know this. You cited Justice, you cited Jim Tatum, but Carolina football is nowhere close to Alabama. How much of an uphill climb do you think somebody, even with the resume and the experience and the accolades of Bill Belichick, will face in Chapel Hill?
I think Bill Belichick already has great respect for what Carolina's success is. And I think he had it because he coached Lawrence Taylor. He coached Paul Davis. He understands the players that were here when Carolina was a top 5, top 7 team. I mean, I don't know if you guys watched the road trip. I intentionally asked the question about the 80 team. Now, he got Calvin Daniels' number wrong.
But how awesome was it that he knew that Lawrence Taylor started as a nose guard?
Well, that's why he wore 98, yeah. And I mean, he also probably doesn't know that Lawrence ran the pool hall at the student union either, but that's a whole nother story. But Calvin Daniels wore 98 because George Barclay wore 99, and that's one of 2 retired numbers in Carolina history. There's only 2 retired numbers in Chapel Hill, 22 and 99, for rightly so. But Calvin Daniels wore 93, and Calvin Daniels and Mike Wilcher, just so you know, who wore 84 as a defensive end / outside linebacker in Dick Crumb's 3-4. Those were my favorite players growing up. And Ellis Alexander, who was a field goal kicker in the 70s from Salisbury, North Carolina, was my favorite player. Don't ask why a field goal kicker was. I met his mom and dad, and all of a sudden I found out he played football. But that team in 80, his reverence for the team in 80 is amazing. Now that is where Carolina fans ought to get excited. The problem is, Tommy and Joey, we're 3 of the very few percentage of Carolina fans who remember the 1980 team. See, that's the issue. And it's funny because I'm in Raleigh on Thursday night for NC State and East Carolina. It's been 46 years in Raleigh. It's been 45 years in Chapel Hill since an ACC championship. That's the part about this, that you have to find you're almost Cub fans. Think about it. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's
a long time.
It is a long time. And I'm not saying it's now, because if it takes and it hits, I think then the minute he leaves, everybody said, well, that was the window. Hope you enjoyed it, right? But Tommy, to your point about Alabama remembers Nick Saban and Bear Bryant and Gene Stallings. Mike DuBose, Mike Shula, Ray Perkins. There are others they don't remember. And that's just the way this is going to be. And I think for Carolina, this is your chance potentially to write a historical type chapter in your history. And look, my dad and I always had this question, and I have one passionate piece that I want to do at the ACC network before I retire, whenever that is. And I want to do a doc on Jim Tatum. I have wanted to do a doc on Jim Tatum since I went to television at Raycom in 2013. And I'm hoping one day I can do the Jim Tatum documentary. I understand he has a son who's alive, who's a lawyer in Charlotte. I'm trying to meet him the whole bit to do this piece. Because my dad and I always talked about, if Jim Tatum had not died of Rocky Mountain spotted fever, what would have happened with Carolina football in the 1950s?
Curse of the tick. That's our listeners, our subscribers, and Tommy knows exactly what that is, the curse of the tick.
Yeah, because I think Jim Tatum had come back from Maryland after being at Oklahoma, working at Carolina previously, being around this program and understanding the program, that Jim Tatum was getting ready to put Carolina football on the map, even to a point where we'd be talking about Carolina the way we talk about Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State, things of that nature today.
It has always been what if and all that. Well, let me ask you this, Wes. What is success for Bill Belichick in North Carolina? What
is it this year?
What is it this year? But when all of this is said and done, what does it look like? What makes it a successful run?
Well, the success for me is this. Success would be not only does he win enough games in the time he's the coach at Carolina, but when he leaves, is the program stable enough that it can move on in some similar path or even continue to ascend. There is no drop if Bill Belichick leaves or retires or whatever, or goes back to get his 15 wins in the NFL, which I firmly believe is somewhere in the stratosphere. Remember, it only takes one owner. It only takes one of the 31 owners, because the Packers are publicly traded, to make it happen. But for me, this year in particular, he's probably got a legitimate chance to win 8, maybe more, depending on injury and things like that. We don't know who on the schedule is gonna catch a flyer here. I personally think the first few weeks are pretty important for places like Virginia, NC State, teams like that. I mean, I think Georgia Tech's going to be good. I think Duke's going to be good on Carolina's schedule. I think Clemson's going to be good. Outside of that, I think Carolina can win a lot of games if they stay healthy. I did South Alabama's bowl game last year. Lopez did not play in it, but I watched enough of their tape. He's a pretty good football player, and he can make plays. I'm as curious about what they're going to be on defense. Now, Roddy and EJ have come to the conclusion that Thaddeus Dixon is going to be a real player. They like Thaddeus Dixon a lot as a player. I'm going to be really interested to see who makes plays up front. Price Yates, Smith, Vilbert, these are guys who are not household names, but can they become household names? Andrew Simpson looks like a pretty good football player. Kamari House, guys like that. Who are they going to be defensively? But here's the caveat. He's never coached really a bad defense, guys. His defenses, even in Cleveland, were still pretty good. And they were bad offensive football teams. But I think, now granted, the defensive coordinator was a pretty good coach too in Cleveland. But I think they have a chance. And if that's success, then I would hope that's enough, at least to start. Because you're going to get players. If he's successful, you're going to get more players than you think. Even in this world of NIL, because quite frankly, here's now the financial acumen we're talking about. And I think that's truly, and you guys can tell me different. You're closer to it than I am, certainly. But it feels like the financial acumen, that part has definitely changed. And that makes a big difference.
Yeah, it feels like they've pushed chips in. I mean, Carolina playing a football coach $10 million a year. I mean, you better bring all the rest of it with you. And I know you got to get out of here. We could talk all day, but let me ask, and then Joey, you can clean up my question, is how does all this affect the basketball program? I'm 100% with you with being football as the first love. It's always been that way for me since I've been going to Kenan Stadium since 1973, watching the teams you're talking about.
Oh, we went about the same time then. We started going about the same time. I didn't go till I was 6 or 7. My mom wouldn't. She was having too good a time. She wasn't going to take me.
They drug me along. I was, 2 years old running around sleeping under those hot bleachers in September. You know, you get friendly with the concrete when it's 110 degrees on the north side.
Yeah.
But when you look at the way this whole thing has been at Carolina,
Right.
I think personally, it's given Hubert Davis a little bit of a shade of being out of the limelight. But your take on the entire approach to football and how it affects both sports, and because we know they, of course, they carry all the rest, and Carolina is all the rest.
Yeah.
Type of school.
No question. Look, basketball has been an amazing product worldwide for the University of North Carolina, right? I mean, you can't have coaching giants like Dean Smith for nearly 40 years and Roy Williams for basically 20 and not benefit from it. And you can't have the kind of players that Coach Smith and Coach Williams had in that time frame. And I should have mentioned Coach Guthridge as well from that standpoint. There have been slight dips along the way. I think basketball but the sport of basketball has dynamically changed at the collegiate level now in the last 5 years. I mean, it's more volatile now than football, and it's hard to be more volatile than that sport is, but it is. I mean, guys, we got to get used to the fact. I mean, I'm getting ready to record a podcast with Joel Berry for ACC Network that'll air tomorrow night, where basically we talk about the 4 new coaches in the ACC have a minimum of 10 new players on their roster. A minimum of 10. That's just, I mean, that's hard to fathom. But that's the norm. Even if they weren't new coaches in the ACC, if you're an established coach, you can have as many. I mean, Clemson, I think Brad Brownell's done a marvelous job there. He's the most tenured coach now in the league with Leonard Hamilton retiring. I think Brad has 7 or 8 new players. I mean, when would somebody have more than 4 or 5? I mean, you guys, we all remember Carolina having a 3-man recruiting class, you know, and now we're talking about 10.
It's hard to wrap your head around.
It's impossible to wrap your head around, Joey, because here's the thing. And the touch point with Carolina basketball, like Walter Davis was one of my favorite. He was my favorite. He and Bobby Jones are my favorite players of all time. But Walter Davis in today's world might have stayed at Carolina 2 years and then taken the bag to go somewhere else. And you wouldn't have that touch point. That's the part where basketball is suffering the most, is the lack of connectivity with fans who have loved the front of the jersey with the freedom of the individual whose name's on the back of the jersey.
That's a great way to put it, which is, you know, why you are who you are, Wes. We appreciate that. All right, I'm going to give you 2 more quick fire questions because I know you got to run.
Okay.
First thing Bill Belichick bans at UNC, is it going to be TikTok dances or Carolina blue chrome helmets?
Well, I saw an internet rumor that the stair-step UNC stuff may come back. I'd be all for that. So I'll swap the chrome helmets for the stair-step UNC, the LT Amos Lawrence jersey.
Oh, yeah.
Long as we can wear the picture jerseys on the field. Remember, Dick Crum created the picture jersey. LT's headshot has the block print Carolina across the top of the jersey, which made him look like, first time I saw him, I was like, that's what South Carolina does.
Yeah.
But no, LT, I would say if we trade the stair step for the chrome helmets for a brief time, I'm okay with that. That's
all right.
What's second?
The second one, who's more intimidating and oppressor? Is it Roy Williams after he feels like he's been done injustice by some referees, or is it Bill Belichick on a random Tuesday?
Oh, boys, I'm going to tell you.
Because he was good with y'all on the road trip. He was good with y'all.
Old Roy from Spruce Pine's a layup compared to Bill Belichick on the Wednesday open mic and the mandatory 15 minutes. I'm going to say this. Here's the thing I would encourage all the people covering Carolina football pressers this year. Make sure it's a question.
He has no time if it's not.
Make sure it's a question mark at the end of the sentence. Make sure there's a question mark, not an open-ended statement about or talk to me about is the worst thing you can say. Because that's going to get you. That's going to get you 4 back under the chin. That's a fastball up tight on a 3-0 count. Tommy, you're going to get a fastball up under the chin. How's that?
All right, Tommy, you don't want to get ear-holed by Bill Belichick, and Wes is giving you some gold there for when you do these media availabilities this year.
You have to dig into scheme and all that kind of stuff with him because he loves to talk it.
And think about what we did on the road show. We hit the 80 button, and the next thing you know, we're talking about Paul Davis, Calvin Daniels, and the inability to watch 16-millimeter film.
That was absolute gold. So good on you guys for knowing the recipe. Wes Durham, we appreciate it, man. We hope to see you a couple of times this season. If not, we wish you all the best. I know you're going to be traveling all about this great conference that now spans multiple coasts. But we appreciate you making time for us here as we get ready for Week 1, North Carolina and TCU this weekend.
Thanks, Tommy. Thanks, Joey. Pleasure.
All right, we'll talk
Take
to you
care.
soon. That's Wes Durham from the ACC Network. We're back. Wes Durham making time for us the week of the first game of the season. Just can't say enough about how much we appreciate him. Class act. Tommy, how much did your heart swell when the first thing he wanted to start doing was dropping some Woody references and talk about Woody's love for Charlie Justice? I mean, that's going to make every single IC subscriber just perk up.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. You listen to Wes talk, and you can just close your eyes and hear his dad. And that's, for me and for a lot of people that watch these, he was talking about Jim Tatum's son. I bet you he watches this podcast. So if you're listening, get up with Woody.
Get at us.
Get up with Wes.
Get at any of us. We'll put you in touch.
Yeah, and get that documentary going, because it'll be great. But to hear the references and all that, to thinking back to 1980, and Joey, you're too young for that, I think, aren't you?
I was one.
Okay, so you don't count quite yet, but I can't believe it's been that long, and to hear him speak of that with reverence, and then also talk about, we could get back to that in covering Carolina, and for the fans and watching Carolina. I don't know. It's a fascinating interview. It's always awesome to talk to people that have such historical knowledge and can spit it out like that. And those Boschheimer rain delays were epic. I will tell you that. I just need to get
credentialed so I can be a fly on the wall when y'all start getting deep into it. But
he gets rolling, and it all comes out some great stories. But yeah, what a great get by you to get him on the show again. We've had him before, I think, but
we had him for the radio show, and we did a pod with him before a Carolina Duke basketball game one time. But he's always been so gracious with his time, and again, we had him because we knew our subscribers want to hear his perspective. Again, the guy is, play-by-play for the Atlanta Falcons for how long, and he's seen Bill Belichick's practices along with the Atlanta Falcons practices. Like there's a handful of people that can say that, and he's one of them. Then, of course, they did their road tour, which you haven't watched. You can still go watch on demand on the ACC Network with Wes and Roddy White and EJ Manuel. They were at practice and had access to the chancellor and the athletic director and Coach Belichick. It'll be some really, really good follows to see just how many of the things Wes mentioned just pan out this year. And we're grateful for him for making time for us. He's, like I said, he's a class act. He's always been very, very open to doing things like this, and we can't thank him enough. And I just hope our listeners and our subscribers like it, because he's good at telling stories. And how many guys that sat under the learning tree with his dad being who he is, and now Wes and his brother Taylor, both broadcasters, and Wes has now gone around to every single ACC school this year to see practice. Like that's pretty impressive. And so the guys got knowledge. I'm glad we were able to tap into that for a little bit.
Yeah. Bless them to go to BC and Stanford out in Palo Alto.
Hey,
that'll be a heck of a ACC Network road trip. But
that man is a soldier. Imagine. So what if somebody would have said to young Tommy Ashley after he went and got his Pizza Hut ACC tournament basketball when he was a kid, what would Tommy Ashley have said after that if somebody said, oh, by the way, in 2025, there will be an ACC network and it will be broadcasting a game between Boston College and Stanford.
In Palo Alto.
Palo Alto,
yeah. There's a word for it, but I can't say it on the air. We'll say mind blown.
Yeah, it's one of Carlin's magic 7. Well, look, before we get out of here, I want to make sure we give some major love to Johnny T-Shirt. Johnny T-Shirt's been around about as long as it's been since North Carolina won an ACC football championship. Not quite as long, but just about. Johnny T-Shirt, big supporters of this here show. We love them. We want you guys to love them as well. I said on the Coast to Coast recently, you've only got a handful of days left to get your gear before the football season starts. If you come to see Tommy and I at Inside Carolina Live in the Bowls lot before kickoff against TCU and you're not wearing fresh gear, we're going to judge you a little bit. I mean, that's Tommy's one of those. If he sees you and you're wearing some old gear, he's going to call you out. So don't make Tommy do that.
Unless it's 1980, vintage 1980 stuff.
Vintage throwback stuff we will allow, but yeah, don't just be wearing some worn out stuff. Make sure that you go buy Johnny T-Shirt, get that premium code off of our premium message boards at Inside Carolina. now part of the On3 network. Use that code, get your 10% off, and you'll be glad that you did. So we're grateful for Johnny T-Shirt for sponsoring. Tommy, appreciate you making time to talk to Wes today, man. I know we got a lot coming this week, so I hope folks will stick around because there's more podcast goodness coming after this one.
Yep. Rate, review, subscribe to the YouTube channel so you get notifications when these videos drop there. Subscribe to the podcast feed so they come right to your computer. You can hear the dulcet tones of Joey Powell and all the wonderful guests that we'll have this week. It's game week. 1 week from today, it is Monday afternoon. 1 week from right now, we'll be outside prepping for Inside Carolina Live from the Bulls lot. So get it together and get there on Monday, September 1st.
All right, brother. Everybody take care. We'll see you on the next episode of a podcast from InsideCarolina.com. Y'all be good.